is the government gives them the drugs, builds bigger prisons, passes a 3-strike law, and then wants us to sing God Bless America? No, no, no. Not God Bless America. God damn America. That's in the Bible for killing innocent people. God damn America for treating us citizens as less than human. God damn America as long as she tries to act like she is God and she is supreme.
Okay, press it.
It's Pod Damn America with your hosts, Jake Flores,
Whoa!
Anders Lee
here.
and introducing little baby Alex. And I'm turning away from the camera because I'm shy and I don't want you to look at me. And the show is starting. It's Pod Damn America.
How long does this drop go?
I was going to say, I think it just goes until you turn it off.
It's just not 30 seconds. I didn't want it to do
This is insane. And introducing Smoothie Turn.
And now, George Clooney.
Okay, holy shit. It just goes, I guess, until you turn it off.
Wow. We were just experimenting with Soundboard and stumbled upon some mixes.
Let's explain what's happening. So there is this thing called a Rodecaster Pro that people started selling, or that Rodecaster started selling.
People started selling this thing.
Well,
I
Get it off all the streets.
On the streets of Manhattan.
it's a funny product because it's a little like mixing board for losers to start podcasts with.
That's in the copy on their website.
Most mixers are not for podcasting because mixers were invented before this specific thing that people started doing with them. So it's for podcasting, and like sometimes you meet a guy who's like, I spent my savings on, I'm going to be a podcaster too, and they have this exact mixer, right? So we got one a couple years ago, and that's why we have those Halloween sounds on the other one, which is at Alex's house, because that's the one we've had for a minute. We bought another one because there's multiple studios and podcasts going on.
You never know when a podcast is going to break out
So
in
we
this
have
city.
We have a whole empire.
this one's fresh
Every
out the
neighborhood
box.
in NYC, we have a studio.
That's right. We're coming. We're going to install one of these things. We're going to find 3 fat guys to talk about movie opinions, and they're going to live in your house. But this is fresh out the box. So they have these fucking soundboards on them. We programmed the other one. This is the stuff that comes with the mixer for podcasting. The first button is that like 90s sitcom guitar riff intro thing that I think the implication is you would use as the intro to your podcast.
Yeah, so you can get rocking.
Kind of, it feels like a radio show thing. In a way.
It's anywhere where everyone's rocking.
It reminds me of Full House or something. Like it evokes all these visual.
It's Full House if you like let everybody like get a little older or a little edgier. You know, like some of those little kids, you couldn't play this kind of the guitar around these little kids. You couldn't put these like pedals in the situation.
I guess what I'm wondering is like, are there a lot of people in the world who bought this podcast machine and then that's as far as they got creatively and then are using this as their intro?
I know you want to do it.
Yeah.
I think if you stopped it like right there, like that's an intro.
Welcome to the Anti-PC Podcast. We're going to talk about women and how white people have it hard these days. This is what 99% of podcasts are, right?
Yeah, they do. They're doing really well though too. Like they're definitely on to something about women and their lies.
Yeah.
Women, their lies are out of control.
You know what I think about women?
Yes. So sometimes I'll see a woman excluded from the workplace and I'll think,
That's right.
Big laugh on that one. It's really good. There's another 5 seconds of the laugh.
Yeah, this one just
There was
going.
women laughing in that, though.
There are. Well, they know it's funny. They know it's funny. We're playing around here, but also I'm serious, and I'm getting some guys together. We're intimidating the streets.
Yeah. You know what I think about cancel culture? It's coming to get all of us.
This is the best we've ever done with the buttons.
We're going to make $1 million, dude.
Honestly, it could come for us because I have a feeling that perhaps that rock track,
Anders is just like, I molested someone yesterday.
those guitar licks sound like they could be copywritten, and maybe this is like a poison pill to get people. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe somebody
dude.
wrote that
Just violated
just to sue
copyright
people
again.
who use the Rodecaster. Yeah, it's for your personal use. It's like, when you would buy a piece at a tobacco shop and like, oh yeah, I'm using this for tobacco for sure.
Oh yeah, my water pipe could
Right.
really use a christening.
Yeah, when you buy the Rodecaster, someone's supposed to say to you, hey, just so you know, these drops, they're only for personal use. You can't broadcast them to anybody.
Is there
But they
anything-
don't, and then you get nabbed.
Is there anything
by the
better
law.
when you leave the head shop with your new water pipe and spark that thing up for the first time, and it's like,
Oh, yeah. Fuck, yeah. Actually, that sounds like a really good vibe. Smoking weed to that music. Just be like, yeah. Life is so fun.
it'd have to be a sativa, right?
Yeah.
Which one's up?
Sativa.
Oh, thank
Indica,
God.
more like Indicouch. That's how I remember it.
That's I've had like 10 years to figure this out. I've gotten nowhere.
Although it could,
There's only 2. It's not hard.
it could be confusing because if you're a cat, Indicouch is like, that's an exciting afternoon. It's
Oh,
like,
yeah, you can
Reading
run
them.
around.
You read them.
Right.
We've discussed.
We can't go back to this. You know what it is that I always learn the difference between indica and sativa and then smoke weed immediately and like forget everything I've learned.
Yeah, man. It do be like that.
That's just something I noticed about weed. No, I don't want to do this part.
All right.
I don't like it after the first part.
It just keeps going and going.
Yeah, that's a whole ass song.
Yeah. Fuck, man.
Well, you know who else keeps going and going? Migrants through the American borders to the south. Especially, and sometimes, without their own consent. And that's
Yeah.
what we're talking about this week.
Should we start with the story or this clip? Because, like, you kind of have to know what's happening.
Yeah, we got to introduce the clip. So here's the long and short of it. Wait, don't you have the mermaid clip
Yeah.
lined up?
Oh, right. Shit.
I mean,
Hey, man, let's just
although,
start
you know
the
what?
podcast
You know
over,
what?
man.
Mermaids are migrants. Mermaids are migrants. in a way.
Mermaid, they're migrating between fish and women.
I'm always saying this.
I have a podcast where we rant about mermaids.
Hold on. Mermaids are not migrants. They're very definitively in the sea.
Well,
The
when they
sea
come
is
up-
most of the planet.
The mermaid everybody's familiar with. Ariel is a migrant. Like, she
Everyone's
immigrates.
familiar with
She
Ariel.
totally assimilates to
Right.
Oh, she is, isn't
Yeah.
she?
What is that supposed to be?
She
Europe?
could even have a like legal recourse for her flight to land because she has to leave the sea because like her father doesn't want her. It's like a dangerous situation for her. There's sharks.
You know how Disney movies are often like The Lion King is Macbeth or whatever? Like they have these meanings for like adults. Is The Little Mermaid a racist movie about like immigration for racist adults? And that you actually are supposed to read it backwards and be like, it's bad that she wants to come out of the water and into our world to marry one of our men and then create an anchor baby, essentially.
Yeah,
Interesting.
which
I
is
was
a
actually-
nautical term.
I was thinking about it the other way because there's that old line in the song "Grand Old Flag." It's like, "Let old acquaintance be forgot."
That is the New
Yes.
Year's
Like-
Eve song.
God damn it! You're supposed to shed all of your memory, all of your cultural heritage, and you could become fully 100% American.
You should like forget how to talk if you can.
Yeah, which they do to Ariel in a way because she can't talk. She communicates in another way.
That's why I
underwater.
said it.
And then, she kind of reverses that too. And
Yeah,
Wait,
she
she
does
can't
reverse it.
talk.
When she's on
Yeah.
land, she can't talk. She gives up her voice to
She's just like her gills start squealing and shit. Just like,
Well, it's this, kind of cute thing where Eric Trump is
like Eric
charming.
Say his
Trump.
full name, Eric Trump. She's so in love with Eric Trump. She abandons her
where do you
family.
think Donald got the idea to name his son Eric? I guarantee you it was from the Little
What
Mermaid.
a
From the
handsome
Little
prince.
Mermaid, which is why his other kids are Sebastian, the Chancellor, and Ariel.
Yeah, and his daughter Yuri. Whoa, shit! What's the name of the sea witch? Ursula, the
Ursula.
sea witch. I couldn't get it until I said sea witch. It was buried in my mind. With this introduction, it makes way more sense to talk about the mermaid first.
Yeah.
Now that we're into it.
Big, hot political item.
Yeah, sorry, veered off into mermaid territory. This is
Okay.
the topic of the week that I chose.
Yeah.
That I think is important to socialism and overthrowing capitalism, and the important, hard-hitting political issues is the Little Mermaid.
These are the issues of the day. Is they've made a mermaid. They made a live-action mermaid.
Yeah,
And she's black, and people are losing their goddamn minds.
it's almost too easy. Like they just do stuff like this now, knowing that the culture war thing is going to pop off. Everyone's going to have a good time arguing. Everyone's going to make a bunch of money, and then we all go home.
Yeah.
They're
What?
all recording their daughters watching it. Be like,
Really?
is my daughter racist? Let's find out. Let's see if she flies into a rage at this.
This is like, remember when Lady Ghostbusters came out, and then we were all supposed to be mad at there were like, sexists that were going to not watch it, and then we had to buy tickets to fight them and stuff.
Yeah.
This is
I remember being like, oh, come on, get over it. So the women, you should, support. And then I never went to see it.
Right.
Yeah. I saw it. It was kind of bad, but you had to be like, it was good. Like,
I didn't like the first Ghostbusters.
Really?
I wasn't going to watch another version of it.
no,
You like the second one?
You're sexist. If
The
you
second
don't.
one where the city's full of goo, now they were onto something there. But no, their whole tone for it is ghosts are real, but we're having a fun time. Grow up. That's scary. You need to take the situation seriously if you're going to bust the ghost.
I actually think it helped destigmatize ghosts for kids, including myself. I was not.
Ghosts should be stigmatized, is what I'm saying. They're forbidden spirits.
If they're real, there's nothing we can do about it.
Yeah, but if
So
they're
we gotta
lingering, you have to help banish them.
Not necessarily.
You have
Some
to
of them are
banish
peaceful.
them.
Some of them are whimsical and fun.
Aren't usually the thing with ghosts is they have a grudge of some terrible kind, and that's why they're left behind. They have a grudge.
Some.
A hand comes out of the back of your head in the shower with the grudge.
Is Ghostbusters an allegory about immigration? Are they ICE? Are they?
In
They
a
are
way,
kind. They
in
are
a
for
way, yes.
ghosts.
Well,
they are for ghosts.
Yeah, they're ICE.
Well, they're
ghosts.
colonialists because they're
Sorry,
the ghosts were
liberals.
there before the people,
right.
and then
indigenous
they're trying
ghosts.
to get them out. Yeah.
That's the main thing about ghosts where I'm not like really worried about them is like if they were real, like America would be chock full of ghosts. There are so many people who got murdered here. They should be running around everywhere.
Everyone in America dies angry.
No one is happy.
Yeah, they would be all ghosts. No one goes to heaven or hell here. You just would be, pissed off and in an apartment.
I mean, I haven't done it myself, but my understanding is dying hurts every time. So, like, there can't be that many people who are like, no, it's good. It's my time.
Yeah.
Are they frozen at the point of death, though?
Ah! That's them being frozen.
I could be a.
Answer the question.
I don't know if I've told this story before. Some people think I'm a ghost.
That's a story you have?
Yeah.
That's just not okay. It sounds like a thing you would just say, but yeah, okay. Tell me the story.
My aunt, several decades ago.
Someone in your family thinks you're a ghost?
Isn't your mother
Kind of.
offended that your aunt thinks you're a ghost? Since
Maybe.
she gave you life, the things ghosts don't have.
They'd have to have it out, I guess. But a few decades ago, my aunt was sitting down for dinner, and my grandfathers were both dead before I was born, and she just felt the presence of my grandfather She like felt him in the room and started. Yeah, she started crying. I think she started crying. I don't know. And then she like
Those are crying.
I thought it was the laugh.
collects herself. About a half hour goes by, and she gets a call from my dad, who tells her, "Oh, we just had a son 30 minutes ago."
Oh. And that's why you're like an old man, baby.
I guess.
Oh, wait. So the ghost went into you? Like Paimon?
Like Paimon.
I guess so. Or it could
You
just
got
be
Paymoned by your grandfather, you're saying?
We have
possibly.
to cut off your head to get him out of there?
He's not evil, though. He was.
You gotta go to
a
counseling.
music teacher. He's a nice man, as far as I know.
Yeah, he's a lot like this guy I know, actually. Drinking Kratom all the time. He's biking around everywhere.
Maybe he tried kratom. That's actually
Maybe he
not
invented
out of the box.
Kratom.
He was stationed in the South Pacific, so it's possible.
Really?
That would explain so much about you.
It's not impossible if you were a ghost that invented Kratom. It would answer a lot of questions I've had.
Anyway, back to the Little
Yeah, people
Mermaid.
are mad because the mermaid's black.
Let's listen
It's
to a dumbass talk about it.
Yeah, okay.
This is Matt Walsh.
Also, by the way, with The Little Mermaid, can we also just mention that just from a scientific perspective, okay, it doesn't make a lot of sense to have someone with darker skin who lives deep in the ocean. I mean, if anything, not only should the Little Mermaid be pale, she should actually be translucent. If you look at deep sea creatures, they're like translucent. They have no kind of pigmentation whatsoever. And they're just like these horrifying, they look like skeletons floating around in the ocean. That's what the Little Mermaid should look like. She should be totally pale and skeletal, where you can see her skull through her face.
That'd be cool.
And that would actually be a version of Little Mermaid that I would watch.
Okay.
He is kind of onto something.
I mean, he's on to something, but unrelated to the original thing he's talking about.
I mean, they probably wouldn't have flesh at all, if we're being real with it. They
would be the sea beasts.
Right, that's kind of the inconsistency, is she has a scaly bottom.
All the mammalian developments would be inefficient for the sea.
Yeah.
That's
but then
why
it's like, then it wouldn't be a mermaid anymore.
It wouldn't be a mermaid anymore.
It has to be half human.
What's like the most?
Wouldn't be a mermaid anymore.
What's the most seductive fish you've seen where you've been like, this could be my fish?
Pufferfish.
Right, like, is there any? I'm trying to think if there is a fish that kind of looks like it has big naturals in a way where if I was a sailor, I could mistake it for a mermaid, and then that would be scientifically the fact of it.
Is
I
there
think that
Pokemon that's a sexy fish?
That's a Vaporeon. We don't have time to get into that.
We don't
People
have
try to
time
fuck
to get
them on the
into
internet.
that.
But
We don't have time to get into that.
mermaids, like the myth of mermaids comes from sailors being really horny and then seeing like manatees or some shit.
Yeah,
And then, mythologizing them as like sirens.
manatees are bountiful.
They're just kind of smooth, I
They're
think.
smooth. They got a lot. They got a lot packed in there.
I mean, they're ugly as fuck in the face, but they're
Not
just
ugly. They're ugly for humans, I guess.
yeah. I mean,
They're cute for. They look like dogs.
yeah, they have like whiskers and tusks,
I think they're great.
but their bodies are just these like shiny, floppy. Like I could kind of see where this is going. This is why people said you should fuck a Vaporeon,
Right.
is because they like.
Which again, we are not talking
we
about.
don't have time to get
because
into.
there isn't any time. Okay. But yeah, that doesn't explain why you would be racist towards the movie, though.
I mean, he's just doing what we're doing, but he's like, I'm serious. That was a funny point. Yeah, if you think about it, the mermaid should look like a skeleton or whatever. Should have a light on the end of her nose.
The people who really don't want the black James Bond make more sense to me than the people who don't want the black Little Mermaid. Because there hasn't been a live-action Little Mermaid. There's been like 20 James Bonds. If you were being a stickler for it, I could see where you were like, no, this one looks too different. Although it's all fucking the made-up toy bullshit, so that's really not worth staking your foot in the ground on.
I think that we should compromise with these scary MAGA hat people and
Meet in the middle.
well, we get black Ariel, but then we give them, the lobster that's Jamaican. We just turn him into like a good old boy.
Ooh.
He's
Or
like,
Ariel, you missing out all the clam gumbo up there.
we make Sebastian white. we make him a
That's a more natural Well, a good old boy is.
Well, that's what I'm
No,
getting
but
at.
I mean, be a black good old boy.
he's still Rasta, but he's a white guy doing Rasta.
Oh.
It's exposed.
Like Nathan Fielder is Rasta Sebastian.
Yeah.
I'm a just
and he comes out of the
lobster
shell.
boy.
The plan? Trade your voice to the Sea Witch to get around on foot on the land and marry Donald Trump's son.
Does anyone remember the plot of this movie?
That's
I
it. I just said
rewatched it recently.
The other thing about this is really funny is that like no one's gonna watch this, right? Like all these like angry men are like, I think the implication is that they were going to watch The Little Mermaid, but now they're not, is what they're kind of trying to argue. And
Yeah,
it's
their
like,
Friday night's ruined.
I was planning on purchasing, me and my boys were gonna go down to the movie theater, all of my whole biker gang, and watch The Little Mermaid together.
When I see this on at the bar, I threw a bottle through the screen.
What's going to be
babies.
the next live action? Because there's Mulan, now this. What do they have? Cinderella. What's the weirdest one they could do? Live
Lion
action.
King.
But they did that.
They did
Live Lion King? They did
did
do that,
that.
didn't they?
That was a huge thing.
And the fact that I didn't remember that happened, I think really is an important note for the story. Where it will be 3 days from now and no one will remember The Little Mermaid anymore.
Yeah.
You know what's good and about Monarchy, actually? Great Mouse
Anders,
Detective.
what the fuck?
Which
Oh,
they should redo with people.
that could be good. Yeah, I agree with that.
What race would they be, though, is the question.
But what race would they be?
All of them would be.
Yeah. God, it makes me bob my head every time I hear it.
I think they'd be Asian.
It's like Wesley Willis or something.
I won't be explaining myself. It's
What
just
about-
something I was raised to believe.
MAGA guy that's really mad about the new Fantasia movie because the broomsticks are woke.
Well, he's getting a handout.
Yeah, this guy
He's getting a
is
handout from the wizard.
what the welfare state when you just get broomsticks to work for you. When I was a young boy, I had to use the broom.
I just solemnly mop, which is what he's doing at the beginning of the thing. They see Mickey when he's at his lowest and are like, good, that's how the help should be.
Bill's character.
And do you remember when the wizard catches Mickey? Do you remember when he catches Mickey? Because he is quite cross.
He's scary, yeah. I
Although
remember.
the level of his transgressions were quite severe at that time.
I was a young man, my wizard beat me, and I turned out good.
What I mostly remember Fantasia is like firework style, like color sort of palettes and things. And I'm trying to think of a way they could get offended at that, but I'm sure they could do it. Like it's a woke display.
This new movie's turning the youths gay with its beautiful art.
Too much fuchsia. Yeah, the main thing I remember about The Little Mermaid, because I feel very secure in saying this, is that King Triton is fucking caked up. He has... his muscles are huge. They're like pillows all around his body. It's crazy. It's crazy looking at him and then looking at her and being like, you two are related somehow. I don't know why you're not bulging out of your weird fish skin.
Do you remember in the original movie how there were all these like urban legends about disgruntled artists who worked on the film, and then if you stop the tape at a certain frame, you can see like they drew in like a dick that flops out of the Sultan's pants at one point and stuff like that.
I've heard about that. I haven't put in the time.
I think they're real. Like I remember, well, I don't know, maybe quote me on that, but like I remember watching this, it like when I was a kid and finding them and stuff. And then there's even like people say like, oh, they made like the shape of the castle that they live in into this like H.R. Geiger penis thing or whatever.
Nice.
How would I miss an H.R. Geiger penis castle?
It's like subliminal. Like
If it's
you're
H.R.
looking at
Geiger, it probably doesn't look like a human penis, right?
Yeah, it looks like a xenomorph penis. But like, my point is, you think they're gonna woke up this stuff?
Oh, I hope not.
You're gonna make it a black dick,
That's what making it woke means.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I have nothing to add to that. That's a perfect observation.
You know what I discovered recently on Disney Plus? There is a wait for it. You gonna do a drop?
I was going for the clap, but I couldn't find it.
Sorry.
I'm scared to hit the buttons now.
There's an animated series about Ariel's life pre-Little Mermaid from like the early 90s. And there's one where there's just a war.
What?
Yeah, there's like a war between...
A sea war?
A sea war. It's pretty cool.
That's pretty
The
cool.
fact that things have come to sea war.
Yeah, so I'm hoping they remake that. That's the thing about Mulan is like I didn't see the live action one, but the brilliance of the Disney movie.
Speak on it.
Is it has something for everybody. It's got
Eddie Murphy.
there's the music, singing. There's the sort of the fluffy little romance. There's humor that adults can enjoy sometimes,
Did you say
and there's
Eddie
also
Murphy?
Is
violence.
it not Eddie Murphy?
He's in Shrek, but that's
No,
I don't
who's
think that's
Mushu?
Disney. Oh yeah, that. Wait, is
Hold
that Eddie
on.
Murphy?
I'm going to look it up before I say so I don't get canceled.
I don't think I'll be canceled for this one. I think because it's Mushu.
Back in my day, Eddie Murphy was Mushu.
Yeah. Eddie Murphy is Mushu.
He is Mushu.
No.
I know I
Never
haven't
mind.
remembered a single actor in the correct role they've ever portrayed, but I was right about Mushu.
I thought it was somebody else.
But they also have. Here's what I was going to say. They also have action for the stereotypically little boys.
Wait, what?
They have action in Disney movies.
Oh,
and
okay.
Mulan, the coolest thing about it
There's
was
a war.
the fireworks. Speaking of fireworks cannons.
Yeah.
And so, what do they do in the live? Do they actually blow people up with fucking fireworks and shit? And like, are they cutting
Yeah,
each other's heads off? And,
That's pretty cool.
and are they going to do that in Little Mermaid?
Dismembered. Yeah.
So
There should
wait
be
a
a sea
minute.
war.
Eddie Murphy is both Mushu and the donkey.
Yeah.
That's weird.
Is it weird? Or is he just kind of doing Eddie Murphy around town?
I don't know. I just like now I'm imagining that they might meet at some point in some sort of universe crossover.
Oh, I hope they don't.
I mean, Mushu, am I remembering this correctly? Does he have shape-shifting
I think he's a
abilities?
little dragon, and they want him to be a big dragon. But I'm loosely remembering. I think that people were offended by Mushu, and that's why he's not in the reboot.
Also, because it would be hard to do a live-action talking Eddie Murphy tiny dragon.
It would be too hard. Technology isn't there yet.
I mean, maybe they could
couldn't
get
do it.
the real Eddie Murphy to just put on a hat. and,
Just follow Mulan around.
yeah, just be screaming.
That's a
while
pretty
they're,
good
like,
idea.
All right.
All right. Yeah, but anyway, the migrants are being treated as political tools in
Well,
this
no, I got to
country.
stay away from this. So, if you're mer people, you're probably going to post up near Martha's Vineyard, I would think.
That's true.
right? Because the sailors, there were a lot of them around Massachusetts back in the day, and you're going to want to be close to people of your kin. If you do have to interact with people, you want the most powerful ones.
Well, with mass fishing, you might actually be caught in one of their giant nets and dragged to your death.
At Martha's Vineyard, they caught the Little Mermaid and cooked her and ate her, and that's why we had to make a new one.
They just ended up in a fish and chips, which I found out at the New York Aquarium recently. A lot of times has shark in it.
Really?
Yeah, because they end up killing way too many sharks, and then you just
I've
gotta throw
always
them in
wanted
there.
to try shark fin.
This is fucked up,
sandwich.
but you think if you cooked the bottom of the Little Mermaid,
Yeah, no, that would be like a shark.
it'd be like a big ass, like,
Like a tuna, probably. Tunas are almost like the size of a person.
she's huge.
She's huge.
What if we found out
She,
that
the tuna.
on the Epstein, like
Murray.
got a cat?
We have a cat in every one of our studios.
He's
Yeah.
trying to. He's blocking me from the microphone.
Anders
right
and
now.
Murray have a lot of tension between the two of them. He was scratched before the recording started.
He literally cursed me.
You
If
can
you remember Super Bowl Sunday.
The
that-
fact
okay,
that
you
you
just
hold that
jostled it
against
to me.
him. Sock it to me, Murray.
you can just pick him up and put him on the ground if he's in the way.
It's okay.
All right, so was your
definitely-
segue that...
Well, I was going to say the Epstein, I bet on the Epstein Martha's Vineyard tapes, they're doing something nasty to the Little Mermaid.
Oh, no.
Jesus
Well,
Christ.
there's no time to go
Eating
into
her.
that. Anyway, a different upsetting thing is that migrants across the Texas border, you got to pull out... Okay, so before we get into this, pull out a chart. Get a cork board out at your house because there's like a few moving pieces here. Venezuelan migrants were crossing the Texan border last week. They were then abducted from the house they were staying at by a woman who identified herself as Perla, who told them there were jobs and housing waiting for them on a plane and food.
Oh.
And that they could have their documents, certified or whatever in their work
Wait,
papers.
she told them this in Texas?
Yeah.
Okay.
They get on the plane. They are then force migrated to Martha's Vineyard, Massachusetts, which is I think a version of a war crime under a forced migration. They get off the plane in Massachusetts. No one knows they're coming there or has any idea why there is a plane full of migrants there. The one behind this was Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who is not involved in the state of Texas at all, but wanted to prove a point to liberals or something that here's some migrants.
Weren't there? I thought Abbott was in on it too, from Texas.
I think. Well, he sent a busload of migrants to New York before, so he started the game.
Okay,
and I think he was trying to outdo him by flying them to Massachusetts. But it's like, if you were trying to meet up with someone in the south or central of Texas, and then we're essentially just kidnapped to an island on the other side of the country, you'd be so fucked. These people are seriously fucked.
The implication here is supposed to be liberals, you claim to love immigrants, and yet you're all rich elites that live in Martha's Vineyard. How would you like it if you actually are the ones that have to deal with them in your face? Because me, the governor of whatever the fuck, Florida, I have to. The logic is, there and stupid, but this is insane, yo. How?
It's really actually a crime in several ways.
How did he organize the flight? Because did he just buy the tickets, or
he
did
just
he use
chartered a plane? I think
government powers to.
It's probably $10,000 to do the whole thing, but it's just really complicated and insane to do. Not to mention really cruel to all of these families they kidnapped.
Yeah.
And sent to Massachusetts, where it gets very cold, people.
I feel
you don't need a code up there.
You get used for a political stunt like that. They should they should take care of those dozen people or whatever,
You may be entitled to compensation.
Yeah.
For being kidnapped.
The Isle of Martha's Vineyard, someone was saying this, a friend of ours from Massachusetts, that because people were surprised in a way because they were sort of welcomed by the residents of MV. But apparently a lot of people who live there year-round are low-income people who are hired to
They
dirty
work of the just saw them and went, oh, there's more gardeners. We ordered these people, right?
There's a lot of Brazilian people there. There's a whole Brazilian community, and there's a big heroin problem on everyone who lives in Martha's Vineyard and the Cape.
Really?
Because there's the population quintuples over the summer, and all the rich people go to their houses, and then the people who live there year round are usually they're not poor because they work on these rich people's houses and make a lot of money doing that, the construction companies and stuff. Although people work service too, and those people are poor. But the people who live there year round are normal working class people. But the gesture of sending them to the Jeffrey Epstein Island in DeSantis's head does not connect at all. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. And they also sent, maybe this was Abbott, sent the bus to the Naval Observatory, which is where the vice president lives, to own Kamala.
Owned.
Wait a minute. She lives in a naval observatory?
That's the official residence of the vice president.
Oh.
It's just like a house in D.C. I've walked by it.
I've never thought about this. I don't know why I thought.
What makes it a naval observatory? Is there a lighthouse?
I think
Is it a lighthouse house? Does she live in a lighthouse?
Does the vice president live in a lighthouse?
Does she live in a lighthouse? You were just there.
Is she a mermaid? That's a real question.
She is disarmingly beautiful.
I think there's a telescope there.
And you know how it kind of seems like she doesn't know how to talk?
Yeah.
Maybe she traded something. Something away to some kind of sea witch.
I mean, she's was top cop in the Bay Area, right?
That is a bay.
She
The
came
Bay Area.
out of Fisherman's Wharf.
Whoa.
They caught her and then made her the DA.
The Lion media doesn't want you to know about the mermaid vice president.
Doug does kind of have an Eric vibe.
Yeah, he does have an Eric vibe.
And their freak niece.
Ursula is what's her name?
Ella?
Ella.
I don't think it's nice to call her a freak niece. She's just like a hipster girl.
similar
I was
aesthetic.
trying to remember her name. I needed like a placeholder word, you know?
You
daughter.
can think it all you want, but don't say it.
I guess she
Friend
never.
of the show, Ella Emma. Apparently, she lives around here. I've never seen her out and
That
about.
makes 100% sense to me.
Of course she lives around here.
Where else
Go
should we live?
outside. Look at people.
But I've never seen her. You know.
We've just established she's not on Martha's Vineyard year-round, just for a few months in the summer.
I guess I forget there are people here who just she probably like puts on a mask when she leaves her apartment building, goes directly downstairs into a car that has a Secret Service guy who drives her.
Bro.
wherever
So
needs
she
to go.
probably looks
How
like
I think Anya Voles is Ella M. Hoff. I think I know like 6 to 12 Ella M. Hoffs. They print them over here.
Did I ever tell you my story about how when I was working at Roberta's, I served a beer to Malia Obama, underage. She came in, and I knew she was underage because I just knew who she was because she's famous. And she was with these two huge guys who were like clearly Secret Service, but they were like, our mission today is to go to Bushwick, so dress like a Bushwick guy.
Oh,
or
really?
whatever.
What were they wearing?
They had like, our hair, and like, like hoodies. And,
Yeah, he had a hoodie that just said "faux out of here" on it. Just posted up.
But she, my friend, so I was working with another person, and the way that restaurant, that takeout place works is that if you want to get a beer, you go grab it from the cooler and you bring it up to the counter and you pay for it. And she brought a Budweiser up, and I was like, wait, this person is famously underage. And I was also like, is this Malia Obama, or am I just racist and imagining? And like, you see a famous person, sometimes you're not sure. I don't know what she looks like in my head, like off of the dome,
What was Eddie Murphy Mushu?
Yeah, I was like having that moment. So I turned to my friend who I'm working with, and she's like, is that Malia? I was like, thank God. Okay. So we're both on the same page. That's Malia Obama. She's underage. And I'm like, oh, I'll just card her,
Yeah.
So problem solved. So I go, yes, this is your ID. And she hands me an ID, and it says, it's some lady. It just says some name, and I'm like, oh,
This
fuck.
is Schwartz Vanderbilt.
I just made this whole thing up in my head. This is just some lady. And I was like, oh, okay, that'll be $5. And then she hands me the credit card, and the credit card says Malia Obama. I was like, oh, she has a fake ID. And she just put me through this whole like psychological loop-de-loop roller coaster thing.
That's when I realized that was Ella M. Hoff.
But then I illegally served her.
Yeah, you never know if that's going to be a sting by the Secret Service to get your bar penalized.
Well, I was like, do I get in more trouble if I do or if I don't? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't she just have one of the Secret Service guys get the beer and?
Whatever.
That's
I'm sure
kind
she's
of-
annoyed they're there.
That's my point,
Yeah.
is that if Ella
She's gonna have a
Emhoff lives
normal
around
life.
here, she's just walking around doing whatever the fuck she wants, and then there's two guys following her, just like cleaning up all the...
Does the VP get Secret Service for the whole family?
Yeah. I
How
think
many
so.
people work for the Secret Service?
A couple hundred. Apparently, they were pretty bad at it. Like, it's kind of a miracle that Obama wasn't assassinated, because they would. I mean, there's that whole scandal.
Always
where
playing
they-
Xbox. Always working on their new song in the garage.
Yeah! Living in a lighthouse!
Protecting the president.
But I can't imagine. Like, there's so many people who wanted to kill Obama that maybe it was just a different agency that actually took care of it, and the Secret Service.
Yeah, they contracted it out. That would be very
Yeah.
American of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're actually having the guys who protect the New York Jets in here. We have the security team from New York.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
I'm not a merman.
I am not a merman.
You know, for a
Allow
while,
me to be
their
clear.
job
I'm not from the
was-
sea.
they did currency stuff. Like they busted counterfeiters, and then presidents kept getting Lincoln was killed, and they were like, "Oh, that was a real shame, but no way that's gonna happen again." And then a few years later, Garfield got killed, and then they were like, "I guess we have to fucking," or it might have even been longer. It might have been after.
I've been capped in the back of the skull.
McKinley.
He's just thinking it though. No one can hear him because he doesn't
he's
actually
a cat.
talk.
Well, Garfield's a cat.
That he is.
Well, you know who else is not a cat? Is this great guest we've got lined up.
He's a cat in the colloquial
He's
sense.
one cool cat.
Right.
You know who else is one cool cat?
He is a labor-oriented cat, a reporter for Labor Notes who has been does a great newsletter every week, Who Gets the Bird, that keeps you updated on labor issues.
It's
around
called
the
Who
country.
Gets the Bird?
Uh-huh.
He is a cat.
He could be.
This is all by design. I had this written down.
I'm sure he's at least a cat guy, a cat person.
Sure. Now you got to ask him.
Damn it. Okay.
You can't be sure of that.
I don't want to ask him. It feels
You
beneath
have
me.
to ask him that. That's how it opens.
Slip it
Write
into
it
the
down. Pull out your phone. Ask him if he likes cats.
Ask him a bunch of serious questions, and at the end, ask the cat question.
Are you a cat?
You got to open with the cat.
No, ask him if he likes
If he
cats.
likes- okay.
All right, let's see what he does.
Are you a cat? All right. And he has a new piece out about the rail situation. A strike, some are saying was averted, but was it? We shall see. And to give us some more info on that, let's talk to Jonah Furman. All right, we are now joined by Jonah Furman, who is a labor reporter, the author of a weekly newsletter, Who Gets the Bird, as well as a writer for Labor Notes. Thank you for joining us, Jonah.
Yeah, thanks.
And I have to ask, where does the name for Who Gets the Bird come from? People are wondering if it's cat related at all. Is it? And what's the genesis of that wonderful name?
Oh, the genesis, it was sort of like true labor nerds would get it, but it's a famous quote from John Lewis, who was the coal miners union president in the 30s, who basically he was like a confusing politically guy. He was had issues with FDR. He was a Republican. And he worked with all these communists and was people were like, why do you let these communists, have staff positions and run your union and stuff like that? And his response was, who gets the bird, the hunter or the dog? Basically being like, I'm using the communists to organize a big union. But, for the left, it's been sort of this phrase that has stuck throughout the labor movement of what is it? We're working in these unions. We're trying to build something like a socialist movement. We're working in unions that are often conservative or, not putting the political part of it first. So that question is that rhetorical question is sort of from the left's perspective in the labor movement too, is what are we doing here? But there's also a nice double meaning there because, the blog started as whose fault is this? The middle finger bird. It's who gets the bird for the failed state of the labor movement in the U.S.?
Right. My vulgarian mind immediately went to the middle finger. And
yes. No. It plays both ways. Yeah.
Yeah. But we are speaking today, a few days after a sort of tentative, it feels like, decision was reached between a number of rail unions and their management, thanks to the leadership of Mr. President Biden, who's taking credit for a settlement. He's according to him, this is a settled deal. But what is the reality with this agreement, and what were the factors that went into the threat of a strike and a lockout in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, it's a convoluted story in some ways, but the punchline of this week was basically we were at the brink of the first legal moment when there could be a strike or a lockout, and it looked like, for a bunch of reasons, it was going to happen. functionally, when that happens on the rails in this country, it shuts down the entire freight rail system, which something like 40% of our goods rely on. It's like a huge deal in terms of just moving the economy. So we were really close to that. And essentially what happened is there was a midnight meeting, a 20-hour session with the remaining unions who didn't have a deal. And they announced a tentative agreement, which is a formal term in the labor movement that basically means you have a deal that needs to get ratified by the membership of the union. And just having any deal pushes that date back. Now, what people are sort of not appreciating, and not just as a formalistic whatever, like it has to go through a ratification process, like I think we very much could still see a rail strike if you just dig into how this stuff works. Like, it goes to a vote. The members of these unions, it's really hard to tell, what's going to happen, but like, it seems quite plausible that they would reject it. The deadline has shifted to a new date that hasn't been announced yet. But essentially, if they reject it and we reach the time deadline, we're at the exact same spot we were. So people are celebrating. That's as much to sort of sell the deal and to get some good PR and to sort of give the vibe that it's over, but it's not in any sense over. And if you remember the John Deere strike from last year, which I feel like is probably the most prominent big strike that people remember, that was the result of a rejected tentative agreement 3 times in a row. So, it's not just like check the box, do it. Like, if you can't pass the contract and you reach your strike deadline, it's the same as we were this week. So people are really breathing a sigh of relief, and I think a lot of that is politics. But there's still very much a strike on the table until this thing gets ratified by the membership by a vote.
Yeah, so it's definitely possible at this point. It was interesting to learn that rail workers, I believe, are not covered under the NLRA. They're in kind of a strange position legally and economically, and in many ways are not threatening to strike or fighting for a strike just for pay. There's a lot of other conditions that they're opposing and agitating against. Can you speak to some of those and the impetus behind wanting a strike in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's worth understanding. We don't have to go all the way into it. The Rail Labor Act. I mean, in the U.S., the original labor movement is on the railroads, and maybe the biggest strike or the most violent sort of uprising, what people say were the closest to like an insurrection, was 1877. 1877 railroad strike. But then you had all these famous strikes. That's where Eugene Debs comes from. The Railway Labor Act is from 1926, I think, after the 1922 railroad strike, where 200 or 400,000 workers struck. And this was before the New Deal, before they were like unions are legal at all. But they said, we need some situation on the rails that will stabilize this. We need something in the federal government to be like, here's the rules. Here's how the contracts work. Here's when it expires. Here's when you're allowed to strike, when you're not allowed to strike. Because it wasn't working to just send out the National Guard and shoot the strikers, which was the original strategy, basically. It just kept happening. The railroads were just having unrest after unrest after unrest. So they invented the Railway Labor Act, and it creates different rules that are just strange and arcane and just not. It also, because it's from an earlier time, basically it puts the federal government way more directly involved in negotiations, which is why you have Congress playing a role. Like John Deere strike, there was no question Congress was going to play a role. It just legally is in a different framework. And also it wasn't 100,000 of the most essential workers. I mean, it was an important strike. But okay, so that's the Railway Labor Act. We can talk about it. In terms of the issues, I think the thing people need to understand is like the past 5 to 10 years, there's been this new system on the railroads called precision scheduled railroading. And essentially what it is in other places they call it just-in-time production or lean production. It's basically saying we're going to cut to the bone, and we're going to just like focus on minimizing cost of operations and efficiency, maximizing inefficiency of operations. In the railroads, it's way more intense because these are monopolies functionally. So there's 6 carriers, the big carriers that we're actually talking about, but they all have different geographies. So it's like they're not competing with each other, right? If you need to ship something from New Mexico to Chicago or whatever it is, there's one rail carrier you're likely to use, and your other option is like put it on a truck or a plane, which just the economics are terrible for it. And for some stuff, it just can't be done. It has to go on a rail car. So they do the cut to the bone stuff, but there's no way out for the customer, the businesses who ship on the rails or people who need the rails, right? So they can just keep cutting and keep cutting. So here's a stat. In the past 6 years, they've reduced their workforce by about 30%. So, and meanwhile, in the pandemic, especially, stuff has gone, the amount of people using shipments and shipping stuff has gone up because people are traveling less. So there's more stuff being shipped to where the people are sitting. So anyway, you basically have, it's classic, like, do more with less, except on the railroads, it's obscene. Just the scale, cutting 30% of your workforce is crazy. While business goes up, activity on the rails goes up. So, you could talk to different rail workers and they'll say XYZ issues. Of course, pay is an issue. Wages are always an issue, especially with the insane profits that these companies make. It's really hard as a worker to see that my boss just got a 15% raise as the CEO this year. He's making $20 billion. They did stock buybacks, all this stuff. That's hard to see, and then see you're going to get, 75 cents an hour or whatever it's going to be for your deal. So wages are a thing. Healthcare is a big thing that people haven't talked about in the strike that much. There's basically a dispute about capping the healthcare costs, shifting those healthcare costs to the employee. And just like everywhere else, you don't know what the healthcare costs are going to be because healthcare infinitely rises, and it's these insurance companies that basically gouge whatever they want. But the big headline thing is the time, just the time off of the job. And what people should understand about railroad jobs, not all railroad jobs, but the operating crafts, which are mostly the people who ride the trains, that's like half of the workforce. And those were the big holdouts in this round of negotiations. Essentially, they've done new policies in this precision scheduled stuff, but essentially you're on call all the time. So you have maybe, I've heard 30 days off for some workers where you're not on call, you're not expected to be there. Now, when I say 30 days off, if you counted your days off, you're counting Saturday, Sunday. That's 104 days off in a year. There's no Saturday, Sunday for these workers. They're on call unless they're on one of these 30 out of 365 days. If you're on call, it means you're sitting next to your phone. You're ready to go to the yard in some set amount of time. Maybe it's an hour or two to get there, to get on a train. And you don't know how long your shift is. And when it's over, you have a very small amount of mandated rest time between them until you're called back. And unless you are on one of your 30 special days, you need to come in or you get fired. So there's stories of people who got hospitalized for COVID and got fired. There's people who had to go to a funeral and got fired or got like some severe deductions on their attendance policy and things like that. So essentially what happened is the deal that was put forward had big raises comparatively to what rail workers usually get. The biggest raises in 40 years, about 24% over 5 years. So it's something like 5% a year. But it had nothing to do with the time off stuff. So the workers, your median worker who's facing the time off issue is like, cool, more money. The money is not, for most of these workers, the big issue. The issue is I can't do anything with the money. I can never spend the money. I can't see anyone, can't see my family, can't ever travel, can't have to be near my rail yard all the time, basically working all the time. So you could say the thing that people keep celebrating about the deal is 14% raise immediately, 5% raise, some retroactive pay, all this stuff. That's good. But the recommendation from the government, the first recommendation had one additional day off, and they get no sick time, meaning you cannot go to the doctor. If you get sick and you're on tomorrow and you're called in, if you don't go in, you are risking getting fired from your job. It's like you're on a probation period and like people treat their new jobs, but you're a 30-year employee, and that's true for you. So I would say that's the big contours of it.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot there to digest, but do you think, just based on the workers you talked to, that this deal will be ratified, or how likely, I know it's hard to make predictions, but how likely do you think there will be an actual strike?
Okay, well, the things that are, I know everything I answer here is like, okay, we got to do, but it's really, I mean, this is like where the details matter.
Yeah.
Talking to the workers, the first thing people say, first of all, some people are just like, fuck you. I'm striking. I'm going to vote no forever. I'm so angry how poorly I've been treated basically over the past 5 years. So there is that group. The more common group are people who are like, I have no idea what's in the deal. Marty Walsh tweets at 5 a.m. We got a deal. It has some sort of sick time. There's like 3 press releases that have slightly different language. And like, you have to understand a union contract is like, 100 pages. It's like you need a lawyer to understand it. I mean, most union members are like lawyers about their union contract. And it matters if it says, you have sick time for only approved policies. Do I need a note? Do they have to approve it? If they don't approve it, what happens? Like if you don't have the language, it's really hard to be like, this is a good deal. So all workers know right now is there's something about expanded unpaid sick time. And some of the releases seem to say that there's a cap on how much you could pay for healthcare monthly, which is $400 a month, which is not a low cap. So taking what we knew before that Marty Walsh deal was announced, we knew that from internal polling and from some of the unions that already voted, at least some of these unions had like 80% rejection rate. So the question is, does unpaid sick time and a $400 monthly cap on your healthcare move it 31 points? Basically, think of it like you need to get 51% to pass it, right? The other thing I'll say about it is that this is not one contract. This is 12 contracts across 12 different unions. So it only takes one of these unions to vote it down. And some of the unions are, not that big, but you could have, there's 125,000 members we're talking about. If a union of 5,000 of them votes it down and goes on strike, it'll shut down the whole system. And the other unions, for the most part, will honor the picket line, or different unions have different rules about this. But like in 1992, that's the last national shutdown we had. And it was one union on one employer, and it provoked a national lockout. So the question of whether there's going to be a real strike is not really like, are 60,000 workers going to vote no? It's like, is one of these unions going to vote it down and hit the deadline and decide to walk? And that raises the odds significantly. It's just easier. I know it's complicated, but basically, like, you could have one smaller union or even a big union vote it down and go out. And then it's just as if they had all 100% had rejected it. The rails will shut down. Congress will have to intervene. So I just don't really see, the numbers being there. I think the most likely way that this passes is members are like, damn, they didn't pull the trigger when we had the leverage. Now it's going to go to Congress again. I don't want to roll the dice because basically Congress can impose a deal. So I don't know.
Yeah. Well, that's, yeah. So it only really takes one union and they all have to go with it. That's solidarity in action, hopefully.
Yeah.
Cool to see. But elsewhere in labor world, we're now passing, I believe, 200 Starbucks stores that have unionized. You mentioned I think you mentioned the National Labor Relations Board. They're right now sort of underfunded, but they're trying to do their jobs, actually, for once in several decades in regulating Starbucks. But Howard Schultz has really been flaunting labor law and, illegally trying to give some workers pay raises who are not unionized. What are the prospects for him actually and Starbucks starting to respect the law, and what does that hold in store for the prospect of more? Because 200 sounds like a lot. It is still, a small fraction of Starbucks stores in toto in the United States. But what kind of friction do you see there with Schultz and the Starbucks management working with the NLRB? Do you think they'll eventually start cooperating, or do you just see a more of an assault going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I would try to put into perspective the Starbucks and Amazon relationship to the NLRB over the past 6 months. These two companies have both gone after the board in a way that is like, it's not like they're like trying to get away with stuff, be sneaky. They're like challenging the board directly. They're saying you're colluding with the unions. Starbucks filed a motion to have no more union votes across the country. Amazon got their case for the Staten Island union that was organized. They got it moved to Arizona because they said the local board has colluded with the union. They're going for the throat of the administrative state of our, labor regime, basically. So I think the question is sort of, we know the NLRB is underfunded. We know that the corporate lawyers can hold this thing up, hold these things up in serious ways. I think it's going to come down to like, where does it get kicked somewhere else? And I think the thing I and a lot of other people are watching is like, does this go to the Supreme Court? Basically, do they find a way to say the National Labor Relations Board's actions, though legal under their current system or whatever, are unconstitutional for XYZ reason? I can't run my business. And if so, does like this insanely reactionary Supreme Court go back to literally like 1920s jurisprudence of like labor contracts are private contracts that cannot be infringed upon by any other actors? It's this doctrine called Lochner that basically said, unions in most forms and most of the things they do are illegal, unconstitutional. Now, that's like sort of the extreme scenario, but I think that's what's going to break the impasse. That, or just breaking these unions through illegal stall tactics, firing a ton of people, showing workers across the country that actually things can't get better. Like there's a lot of it that is sort of like on a public opinion sort of level, right? So like if you see that Howard Schultz and Jeff Bezos can just do whatever they want, it changes your calculus as a worker, saying, does it seem worth it to try? And that's been the thing that has, the thing that's so amazing about Starbucks, 250 stores or whatever it is at this point, like you said, it's out of 9,000. It's not that people think that we're almost there, we've unionized the whole thing. It's that people think, oh, like I can try and do that. And that's why you see organizing drives at like Chipotle and at Geico and at, Trader Joe's, is because people are looking at Amazon and Starbucks workers who have unionized successfully, won at least a vote, if not a contract, and are saying, oh, why can't I do that? I've literally talked to workers who are like, I just saw that Starbucks did it. So I was like, yeah, absolutely, we can do that too. So I think it's going to basically exist in this like protracted war between the board and these corporations until it either escalates on the side of the law, probably the Supreme Court, or it escalates on the side of the unions of, strike activity or organizing enough density that basically forces these employers to live with it. But I do think it's like seriously boiling. I think the next couple of years are going to be kind of definitive for how the labor movement exists in this country.
Right. And one thing that'll be interesting to see going forward is the Teamsters, who have a new president who's kind of promised to be a reformer. How do you think he's lived up to that? That's the Sean O'Brien, who came in running against a handpicked successor to Jimmy Hoffa Jr., who is running is running the Teamsters up against a new contract, I believe, in the coming year for UPS. And a few years ago, they kind of shoved it down the members' throats, but now it seems like there's going to be a different process. What's the preview of that? What's that going to look like, and how ugly is it going to get?
Yeah, it's kind of amazing. Like talking about Starbucks, Amazon, Trader Joe's, that's sort of the non-union manifestation of like workers are pissed off and something's going to change. In the unions, the rail stuff is part of this too, but in the John Deere is part of it too. In the unions, you see basically status quo, how the unions have existed for 30 years is also getting shaken up. So the last time UPS struck was in 97. And that was because very similarly, they had their first ever Democratic elections among the membership. important group called Teamsters for a Democratic Union played this role in winning that right to vote and then electing this reformer whose name was Ron Carey out of the New York City local. They elected him in 91. In 97, they go on a huge strike, win big things at UPS. And it became, it's the biggest strike of our lifetimes. Then in that union for 25 years, it went back to this very sleepy status quo. There was no strikes at UPS. There was no major improvements. Things got a lot worse for UPS workers. And then last year, this Teamsters for a Democratic Union again sort of tapped this vein with a group called Teamsters United that elected new leadership that I think is sort of going to replay it. I mean, I think, in a lot of ways, we're echoing this moment that is sort of forgotten now in the early to mid 90s when people felt like there was a new labor movement, like one generation had passed. There was, Bill Clinton was very exciting for some workers, for some of the labor movement before NAFTA and things like that. There was new leadership at the AFL-CIO. There was new Teamster leadership. And I mean, talking to Teamsters, I know O'Brien seems to be committed. You hear him talk about the company. He talks about it like someone who's going to fight the company. Their contract expires August 1st of next year. They have 300,000 workers at UPS now. They've been holding rallies. They've been doing the serious run up to a strike that you would expect. So they're talking to their members about start saving money now. They're doing parking lot rallies. They're doing pledge drives. They're building out the infrastructure to do that. I think that's credible. I think, there is, of course, the theoretical possibility that UPS caves on core demands. One of the things at that job that is most egregious and is from the 2018 contract that members rejected and then had imposed on them by the union and the company was the creation of basically a driver who is making less than a driver. It's called a 22-4, is a new classification that was said you could work on different dates, like work more weekends and make less money. Maybe if the company is really scared and watches what's happening elsewhere, but that's why stuff like the rail strike and rail negotiations is so important, is not just because for those rail workers, but it's because this feeling workers are looking to each other. They're looking at Starbucks, they're looking at the rails, they're looking at UPS, they're looking at Sean O'Brien. They're trying to figure out, is this legit? Are we doing this? Is this the time? Can we win? On UPS, I think everyone, next time you see your UPS driver, you should ask them about the strike next year. And that can be your test. How well organized are they, right? But in my experience, you ask a guy wearing the Browns and he knows that contract's up, we're going to fight. And a lot of people talk about 97, this is like this golden moment that they had when they struck for 15 days. I do think 2023 will probably go down similar.
Yeah, it'll definitely be exciting to watch. One elephant in the room, though, I feel like is the Federal Reserve kind of looming in the background. And, I don't know if they've said this explicitly, but a lot of people, I think, have speculated with good reason that they are threatened by this upsurge, call it what you will, in labor militancy, and really want to loosen the labor market and perhaps force a recession. What kind of impact do you think that's going to have on the labor movement? And are the workers you talk to concerned about that?
Well, one thing I would say is thinking about, everyone's talking about Volcker and the Volcker shock in the 70s when the Fed basically decided we are going to, just totally destroy the economy for workers so that we can take control back. One thing that's different now, and I know, I'm very proud of the labor movement we have now and all the new movement and things we're seeing, but in the 70s, there was this thing called the wage price spiral, where there was all this inflation, and then there was wages that were keeping up with the inflation, partly because you had a lot more union density and a lot more union activity. In a way, I feel like because our labor movement is weaker than it was in the 70s, and certainly weaker than what the people in the 70s were thinking about the 60s, the 50s, the 40s, they're kind of, the capitalists are kind of sleeping at the wheel sometimes. they are not as scared of this labor movement, which means they will not act as aggressively towards it in a paradoxical way. Now, the question is, can labor, extend this moment, this opening, before they induce a recession? I don't know, but I think it's slightly different dynamic where, like, if there's a big labor upsurge, so far this year, what there's been has all felt like a sneak attack to capital. The question is, how long can that last? But in terms of the Fed shocking us into a recession, things like that, there was a lot of strike activity in the 70s and 80s. There is strike activity during recessions. One of the biggest strike moments, in my conscious life was during the 07-08 recession. The auto sector saw some big strikes, big activity. It's not good for the labor movement for job loss, but it certainly does shake things up. And it makes a lot of people wake up. The stuff we saw in rail is like the industry has gotten so bad that workers are more ready to move. So I wonder too, like, if the Fed goes too hard, will they provoke workers in a way that they haven't? As bad as things have been, it's been, for a lot of people, it's been a slower erosion. If they decide tomorrow that we're going to just cut people's legs off at the knees, they could see a lot more people provoked by that, which could mean a more successful fight back. I know it's all tea leaves, but it's like thinking about how your average worker is going to respond. It's like there's anger, there's demoralization, there's organization, and those are the three things that I'm like, if you play them right, they actually could mean some serious resistance to that behavior.
Yeah. Well, one question I want to end on, which kind of goes back to the opening thing you were saying about the who gets the bird with union conservatism. I over the summer did a little electoral work, and one thing I found from talking to labor unions or union members is that the unions are really reluctant to endorse challengers to incumbent Democrats. Not always opposed to endorsing progressives. They'll endorse some pretty strong progressives, but if you're going up and against an incumbent, they tend to hedge their bets because if that challenger loses, then they have a bad relationship going forward with the incumbent. How do you think the left in general can kind of get the labor movement or the labor movement itself to get the unions to be willing to challenge Democratic incumbents and make even bigger political risks in the future?
Yeah, I mean, well, one thing I would just say is, like, the thing you said about they're scared that the challenger will lose and then the incumbent will not like them. It's even more like systemic than that. What they are worried about is that the relationship with the party in general will be worse off. One seat, two seats, even one bill that they could get passed is worth less to a lot of the political strategy there than being like, generally the Democrats like us. The leadership care what we have to think, and we're not pariahs to them, and they live in fear basically of being like, if we step out, then like, what if they don't pick up our call? But then that leads you to never call about anything that matters anyway. So it's like this, it's whatever, it's this cycle of it. I mean, I think the left's role, if you want to talk about like moving the unions towards something more ambitious and more progressive or more militant or anything like that, is like, a lot of the work we have to do is just rebuilding the connections there. Like, I wonder, I mean, I was thinking about this week, and not to be a jerk, but like, I just wonder how many people on the left like talk to a rail worker this week and ask them, what's going on with you? What do you think of the thing? And had a conversation. It doesn't even have to be about politics, but just making that connection back. Like, the hope for a left labor movement is going to have to rely on the left and the labor movement reintegrating on some level. And a lot of that is on the personal level. A lot of it is like, people on the left are like, the majority of people on the left, or at least whatever, the vibe of people on the left or whatever, is like people like me, people who went to college and then saw things getting worse and decided this relative displacement of my prospects is concerning to me and something should change. It's not like 100 years ago is a lot more deeply embedded in the railroad workers and in not just these fancy old whatever, not just like the blue collar stereotype, but also just like people who were in the unions were also in some of the left organizations. And that connection at the bottom changes the calculus for people who are making the political decisions at the top. So until we build some more connection, I mean, my main thing is mostly just like, if you think of yourself as a leftist, you should go out and meet some union members in the big strikes. Go to a picket line and meet somebody and talk to them. Don't talk to them about like, will you sign my thing? But talk to them about like, what's going on with you? Stay in touch. Can I support you? Here's why I support you. And let's just build a relationship. And it's, it's like, it's not going to happen next election cycle necessarily. It could, but like, I think a lot of what our job on the left is to do is get back in touch with what are workers fighting for? How can we help? And how can we connect that to a bigger political vision?
Yeah, that really reminds me of something that I saw that gave me a little hope recently was Bernie Sanders was in the UK supporting their rail strike, which I believe is ongoing. And he gave kind of his boilerplate regular speech, but he said something in there that in the US, he said, we're trying to combine our progressive movement with our labor movement, which is, to me, that's the goal. And I thank you for giving us some more background information on it. Where can people find more of your work?
People should check out Labor Notes. You can go to labornotes.org. You can also follow me on Twitter. It's probably the best way to, for better or worse. I have like, when there's big strikes, I have like workers be like, oh, I made a Twitter account to follow you. And I'm like, oh, my gosh. Like, I'm sorry. Let's just give me your email. We'll talk. But labornotes.org is one good place and Twitter is another.
All right. Jonah Furman, thanks again.
Thank you.
And we're back
With Jake Flores.
and Anders Lee.
Anders Lee still here.
Little baby Alex. Wow!
I'm the baby. All right.
Not the mama.
I think
We have to. This is the last podcast we do that
Yeah.
button.
What a great interview.
It's kind of like making me like
Sick? Is it
lose
making you
my
sick?
mind. Like, I don't know.
Oh, green behind the gills there, isn't he?
It's just playing in my head at all times now. That weird song.
That's how you know you wrote a good one.
Yeah.
It's good enough to go on the Roadcaster Pro.
Yeah, it's one of those like royalty-free things. You want like if you make a short or something. It's like, oh, now we get to add music. Here's the fun part, and all of them sound like that. And there's like nothing you can.
Like the ones that come on the keyboards.
Yeah.
The Casio keyboards. You ever listen to Wesley Willis?
Uh-huh.
Like every song was just him pressing that button and then rambling.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh,
you never.
shit.
When you
That's a
listen to
huge
Wesley
letdown.
Willis, you never figure that out. It's the same song 100 times.
Damn it. Okay. I thought he was at least like composing his own music.
No, that was the
boy.
whole point of it. It was that he was just pressing that button
Zutalor.
and then just saying weird shit, and everyone was like, he's like outsider art.
Yeah. No, I knew he was,
Anders
Wesley
knew
Willis.
that.
Rock on Chicago.
Wait, Daniel Johnston, was he also doing that?
Yeah, he would just press the acoustic guitar, and then it would play. What do you mean? He played like instruments, right?
Yeah, he was actually okay. He knew what he was doing musically.
Yeah.
He knew that other guy knew what he was doing. Well, let's get the hell out of here, huh?
Yes, folks. Twitch is going to be popping off this football season. I meant to start doing this week for week 1, but there was flooding in our apartment, so gallons of water started coming to the ceiling, so I couldn't stream about the NFL. But
You couldn't stream because you were getting streamed on.
literally. But every Tuesday I'm going to be doing these probably around 3:00 most Tuesdays EST. I will be talking football stuff. Also,
Would have been a great time to hit the button, but we're done with it now.
we're no more. I cannot take another
I could
drop.
It's a football song.
I could hear it in my head.
Kinda, yeah. Actually, it's probably was used in an arena football broadcast at one point. But if you are in New York City and you're Ella Emhoff and you're listening, feel free to come. Please come to Botanical Comedy, which is going to be at Misfit Kava next weekend, Saturday, September 24th. And that's going to be at 9 p.m., and it's going to be a lot of fun. We got some great comics on the show. Kenise Mobley, Yadoye Travis. We also got Kelly Bachman, Colin Burgess, me, Anders Lee, will be hosting. So make sure to come out for that, and it's free.
God, I wanted to play it while you
We're
were
done with
listing
the button.
those names. It would have been perfect. That's what it's for.
I don't want to hear it again.
With Kenise Mobley. Yadoye Travis.
All my shows are kind of far away. You can just follow my Twitter at this point. I'm not going to say what it is. You'll
Really
figure it out.
You really got to want to follow it.
You got to figure it out yourself. Do some work. Do some work for once in your life. Stop trying to be Mickey with the magic wand and be Mickey before when he's mopping the floor.
You mop the floor yourself. You take off your stupid wizard hat.
I'm going to mop the floor with your ass. If you keep up that sass mouth you got running.
You're disappointing your wizard.
Jake, you got anything coming up?
No, I quit live entertainment to work for the summer. I'm learning life lessons and bettering myself through work, which makes you
Free.
Yeah, it sets you free.
That's great.
I
Good
don't
to
know.
hear you're free.
No new stuff soon, but soon.
Soon.
Nothing nailed down yet. Soon. I think
Yeah,
I'm
see
gonna
you
open for a
soon.
band pretty soon, but I forgot what the date is.
That's dope.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna play it anyway. It's not like I feel like if it goes away, a part of me is gone now. Like it feels like I need to be in this all the time now. Like it's like a blanket or something. And everyone's taking off their headphones except for me. It's finished. Yeah, it's finished. It's finished.